Howdy, Hapa Fodder here. Today we're going to talk teamwork. And realistically, not just teamwork, but warshipping. What do you need to do to be successful in warships? How difficult is it to be successful in warships? It does seem today that it's a little difficult with a lot of the player base not exactly uh, attempting to do their jobs oftentimes. So we're going to talk about a little bit um, with that. Teamwork. What is teamwork? So it's it's funny that I'm going to talk about this subject because you'd think that in the gaming community, in a game like this, where teamwork is essential, you'd know what that means, right? But let's talk about some of the toxic um, stuff that might occur, right? In worship specifically. Battleships sitting in the back, watching cruisers tank for them. Battleships never getting involved in the fight for that matter. When the team calls a direction, people going the other direction. Um, Now I get it. I get it. Some people are going to call strategies that don't necessarily make sense, okay? But this little area over here is perfect for that. Have the conversation, talk about it constructively, however. Calling people names, talking smack to people, saying things that aren't necessarily proper. I mean, that's not helpful to nobody, right? And I'm not saying I'm perfect. Lord knows I'm not. Anyone that knows me knows I'm not when it comes to the conversation in chat. I've had my share of chat bans. It's occurred. I've raged. Everyone, I think, has at some point. Unfortunately, I think I have, up until recently, a little less self control, right? Um, but anyway, let's move along. So, things I wanted to bring up. Eye on the goal, getting the W, right? Getting the win. Kind of important, right? Getting the win is super important. It's what you
Massive
should be
storm
trying
moving
to
in.
do. You should be trying to get a win. No matter what you're doing, everybody's goal should be going towards that. So, what does that mean? Damage. Damage is great. Damage is wonderful. Damage helps the team. But realistically, in the end, removing guns from the battle should be every player's goal, right? Getting guns out of the fight. Not it does two things. One, there's less stuff shooting at you. That's always a plus. And two, you get points. Okay? Dealing a whole bunch of damage and farming damage doesn't necessarily help the team if you can't finish the job. This is a big problem I see a lot of times. And this is the problem I have with battleships sitting in the back. Now, that being said, some battleships should sit in the back, okay? Not every battleship is a great tanker. Case in point, the Americans. They're not the best tankers in the world. They are kind of squishy in today's meta, to be honest with you. But I can make an argument for pushing too, because at the higher tiers, you have some of the fastest battleships in the game. So that's just my personal thought process. If you're in a German battleship, you really should be pushing. They're brawlers. They're great at it. They have good secondaries, right? Let's talk about doing your job. A destroyer. What's a destroyer's job? Okay? One of the first things that you should be looking at doing, in my opinion, is spotting. Spotting. Light the enemy team. I know, it's crazy. Spotting doesn't get you anything. It doesn't give you extra experience or credits or kudos. You get a cool little ribbon, right? This little ribbon up here. This is what you get. This is your reward. Spotting damage doesn't really give you a whole lot, but it's very important. That's how you know where the team's at. That's how in this battle we realized, oh wow, it's going to be a heck of a fight at A because the majority of both teams went to A, right? So It's a lot more important than people realize. And in the end, spotting helps your team deal that damage and get those kills. Area denial. I have always said some of the best destroyer drivers or destroyer battles, the destroyer may not be on top. The destroyer may actually be on the bottom and have dealt no damage. But dropping the torps and getting the enemy to constantly change their course is a lot more helpful than most people realize. It does a lot more. It keeps the enemy from being able to necessarily shoot at you. It keeps the enemy from being able to deal the damage that they're going to want to deal. Capping. Obviously, battleships charging in, crazily to get a cap isn't the best idea. Destroyers. Destroyers have got to cap. But the key here is knowing when to cap, right? Knowing when to cap. That's huge. You don't just roll in hardcore, get in the cap, and expect to win. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you've got to wait. Sometimes you've got to let the enemy be dumb and cap. Sometimes you've got to let them try. Because the destroyers out there today have a pretty hard go at things. What do I mean? A lot of radar, lots of hydro, lots of destroyers, right? A typical match nowadays, a tier 8 and above, you're going to have 5 destroyers in the match. That's no fun, especially when you're not the best destroyer driver in the world. Even if you are the best destroyer driver in the world, it's still a challenge. So, knowing when to cap, knowing what ships you should be trying to cap with, right? Case in point, spotting ranges on the Germans aren't the best, but the Germans are great mid-game, or even late game. The Japanese, they're slow. You want something that can get into a cap, and get out. Sometimes it'll work out in your favor, but not always. Screening. What does that mean? If you're one of the destroyer drivers, and I'm going to say this as I'm doing it, that's behind the battleships or with the battleships, you're not exactly playing the way you should. You are not screening. What does screening mean? You should be attempting to spot torpedoes before they get to your battleships and cruisers and even your other destroyers. You should be attempting to spot other destroyers before it becomes a problem. That's screening. Being out in front, spotting, doing the job that you need to do. This helps your team. You don't even necessarily have to shoot anything. You could just be out in front of them, spotting what you can spot, getting targets shot at, right? Some of my best games, in my opinion, I didn't deal a whole lot of damage, but my spotting damage would be sitting up around 100,000. That's insane. That means that you helped your team deal 100,000 damage to the enemy. That's huge. To me, I think that's a big part of the game. Cruisers. What are cruisers' jobs? Well, the tick is huge to me. What does that mean? That means starting fires on as many battleships as you can. Start a fire on a battleship, get it going, rotate to a new target, and then start a fire on another battleship. And when the original puts his fire out, because, hitting the R key right away when a fire starts is very important, you go back to that target and you start another fire on them so that it sticks. Radaring. Using this little mini-map with the last known detection indicator. Case in point, this gate. If you don't know how to do it, you go up here, you click on this little gear shift, last known position markers, you turn that on. Then you go up and you turn your hydro acoustic ring on. Take note of the color and the icon of it, right? Or the radar if you've got radar. Doing that is immense. You have to do that. You've got to have those things on so that you know when a last known position marker is inside that radar range and you can hit it and hopefully light them up. These things are very important for a cruiser. AA defense. AA defense is huge. Some of these battleships have good AA ratings, but they're so huge and there's so many aircraft coming in that sometimes it's a problem. And when they've already hit that repair button for that one fire that the cruiser put on them, and now they're getting flooding because a torp bomber comes in, you've just lost a huge asset. It's very important, cruisers, not to throw your ship away, but also not to sit behind the battleships, because another part of your job is, again, screening. You should be looking for torpedoes that are coming in on your friendlies. Now, this doesn't mean YOLO out ahead of everyone. This doesn't mean get out there and go nuts and shoot every other second and be lit the entire match. Be cool, calculated, and careful. You have to learn when to push and when to fall back. When to hold them, when to fold them, as they say. It's pretty important. Battleships. What is your job, battleships? Well, I hate to say it, your job is the target. Your job oftentimes should be to tank, to take the damage from the enemies. You're able to heal it, you're able to take it. That's your job. Sitting back, watching your cruisers and destroyers tank for you, that's just ridiculous. That's a waste of a battleship. Learn to get in there. Learn to not be afraid to take the damage. But learn when to push. Push with the team. Don't sit back the entire match while your team dies and then at the end of it decide, okay, now's the time to roll in hot and heavy when I have my full health and die then. That is not very intelligent. In fact, that's a good way to just lose a battleship without having done anything. That's just stupid. So, watch the team. Go with the team. You don't necessarily have to be right up in line with the cruisers and the destroyers, but being with them as they push forward is huge. It really is huge, because if you're scaring an enemy cruiser or other battleships because you're pushing, so they're shooting at you, that means that your cruisers are capable of firing at whoever's firing at you. I get it. I get it. The average player is probably oblivious to the ships around them. So you can't just expect them to always help you. The point of this, though, is to make people realize that it's not just one player in the game. This game is about team play. I've said for, well, years that divisioning on this game is huge. It changes the dynamic of the game. It changes it ridiculously. It makes the game fun. And when you have a team of individuals, the game is just not fun. Don't YOLO in. Don't just go off and go to town and push in because your whole team went to a flank somewhere. Don't do that. You just wasted your ship. That's silly. Hapa's rule number 1, always and forever. Don't be the lone gunman on one flank by yourself. All you're doing is throwing your ship away. I've had that rule since back in the Watt days when I used to play World of Tanks. That was my rule. If the team YOLOs, you go with the YOLO. Stick with the team. As a blob, go around the map. And if you lose, so be it. It's not an individual's fault. It's not one player's fault. You're a team. It's everyone's fault. When you look at chat, and chat is just raging, and they're blaming one person, I get annoyed. Because it's not always just one player's fault. Now, that being said, have I called one individual out for not playing correctly before? Of course I have. But if you're in a conqueror, case in point, and you're sitting on the white line while your team is dying around you, and you're just sitting there farming damage off the targets that they've spotted, and you're full health at the end of the match, that's a problem. That is a problem. Or if you're in a tier 9 match and you're in a tier 7 and your 9s are sitting back while your 7s are trying to engage the enemy and they're getting wrecked, and your 9s after all the other battleships have died, your 9s still have full health and your 7s are dead. This too is a problem. You're the top tier. You should be tanking. The 7s should be behind you. So if you've got a team that's attempting to play intelligently, they're attempting to kill the enemy, they're attempting to push a flank, stick with them. Go with them. Don't sit back. Don't think that you're going to be the lone survivor in a super streak where you're going to be the one doing everything and win in the end. Don't think that way. Try to work together as a unit. This is important. This is a big deal. And if you're capable of doing that, if you're able to pull a win off as a result of that, people will remember that. They'll be like, hey, that guy was actually a good player. And then if more and more people start to do it, you'd be amazed at the results. I've had so many battles where I thought we were going to win because we had more ships available. So that as a lower tier, I pushed in, and then all of a sudden, we were all dead and the top tiers were sitting back still, and it was a loss. And everyone's raging, and it just becomes a horrible environment. The game's no fun. You tend to want to go do other things. This is the point. This is what I'm getting at. So if you can, if you will, help build the community. Help be successful. Help make the game be successful. Work with your teammates and do what your ship class is meant to do. This game can be so much fun, especially when a team actually works together. It's crazy. Take a whole bunch of individuals and try to get them to work as a team. I know. I know. But all you could do is try and ask and hope. And in the end, who knows? At the end of the day, all I'm saying is relax. It's a game. Try to work together. Try to work toward a common goal. Try to play the objectives and have fun. You never know. It might work out. Be objective. Listen to constructive criticism. And have a great day. Hapa Fodder out.